and welcome to BonkTable. My name is Mass, and today I have my lovely co-host Cassandra.
Hi.
And with me today is our only local Spires player, Skillen.
Hey.
So some of you might remember Skillen from episode 62 of the Battle Reports on YouTube. Him and I played a game, and then I was like, yo, you want to talk about casual versus competitive and all what that entails? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then I shot a message to Cass and was like, we're going to talk about casual versus competitive because I can't be bothered to read a book. And Cass was like, yeah. So that's what we're doing.
Sorry, in my life.
Yeah. I couldn't be bothered to read.
If you ever told me to read a book for this, I'd quit.
Yeah, that's why I would read the book, because I know you can't. Like, you would touch the
fact
book.
that I can't read is not material here. I'm unwilling.
You're just a barbarian. You're like, I can't read.
Yeah.
I feel like if you touched a book, it would just start to melt in your hands. You'd be like, well, it doesn't work, guys. Look. And it's just like, oh, it's all over the floor.
I don't know how, but me complaining that a book doesn't work because I haven't read it is somehow captures me perfectly. So I really appreciate that. I found my first edition Wadroon army list, and I really do want to learn to read so that I can do a deep dive of that book so that we can look at how they've changed over the development of the game up to this point, but yeah, I definitely got to figure out how books work first.
Oh my god, this if we had a Patreon, I would rename it right now to the Teach Cass How to Read Fund, and then make a little tiny school.
That might make us tens of dollars, if that's the angle. That's a monetization strategy that might. I mean, I don't want to say that I can read, because that's less funny than I can't. But whether or not that's a scam, I think comes we'll have to read the terms of service so we can get into the technicalities of what's true and what isn't versus can you raise money for something that's just funny?
I feel like you could raise money for sarcasm. I feel there are people who just give money or do things just because ha ha funny, or yeah, that's the joke.
Oh, well, those people should listen to our podcast.
Yeah.
If you know somebody who's like that,
please
send them over here.
Send money to learn how to read.
I do so much gambling in my free time, and I have some pretty awful people after me, so we really have to figure out a way to make money off this, or there's not going to be Cassandra in the podcast for too much longer.
Oh my god. I have no idea. To be real, on the down low level with everybody, I have no idea if opening up a Patreon is even worth it. I've talked to some people who actually have Patreons, and they're like, wait until you got 1,000 subscribers or a bunch of people or something. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'll probably think about it more at that point.
Yeah,
really, the thing that I'm hearing right now is that we're on the verge of a cast Boss Man Jack arc, and I'm all about that. I'm for that. So at this point, a Patreon, it would feel weird for me to do it. I like to joke about making money off this a lot, but to actually be to shake the cup when it's such a small community and everything. We have a perfect following for the size of the community, I think, so I have no complaints there, but just being realistic about the size of things, it's just asking your friend for $20 because you're making a podcast. Yeah. Which and the thing is, in so many instances, that's exactly what it would be, because we have deep ties with this community and we're beloved. We're fucking BonkTable.
What the fuck did I got a message. Okay, so a couple things. I got messages probably a year ago when we first started about a Patreon. There's a couple people who are like, hey, I'll give you money if you had a Patreon. I'm like, it's fine. Relax. I'm not super worried. Remember, this is a hobby. We do this for fun. If we eventually implement a tip jar or something, or maybe, because it's, I don't know, it's $20 to pay for Buzzsprout or whatever the hell we use for the podcast. It's fine. But it's just something that's not on the radar simply because, we're small, we're doing all this, whatever. But the other one, and I totally forgot what it was in the back of my head, so fuck me. Cass, what were you talking about before I interrupted?
I was just in a really I was just doing a dumb bit because I was gonna say, it's actually gotten dumber because you started talking and I had a chance to think about it. But I was like, this all was building towards me saying like, if we open up a Patreon, then I'm gonna have to post. And I'm hoping that sound effect made it through on the recording.
Fuck you, Jesus Christ. I also had a second point that I completely forgot about because of like people asking me for Patreon stuff, and now you have blank in the great. Well done.
You're just lucky that I haven't paid for the Discord that lets me put custom sounds in the soundboard, because then this podcast would just be ruined.
I would have all the various versions of Welcome to BonkTable. This is a Conquest Battle Report, and like all the stupid versions I have of that, or like all the different ones or whatever that I just do on the fly.
I'd be into that, honestly.
I should probably cut them out of all the various battle reports and just put them into little audio files and send them to you.
We should just
those are pretty good.
We need to enrich the audio environment of this podcast, and I think like stupid ass soundboard sound effects
This is what we've hit. I'll probably, so when I like have to edit this and do like looking through bits, I'll probably remember what I was going to talk about because that was going to bother me, but like damn it. Okay. So Skillen is one of our locals. We know him. That's why we're like super chill and talk about sound bits and other stuff. How'd you get in Conquest? What do you play? You want to tell us about yourself and all that? Like, what's your
you
background?
just showed up. I don't even know what you like.
Who are you?
My origin story?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Where
weird.
were you born out of?
I just showed up out of nowhere and then, got my ass beat for like probably 3 or 4 months and then stopped getting my ass beat as much.
Was this from your father?
No, this is just the Conquest
Holy
storyline. No, so I think I started playing. I actually started playing war games as a kid because my parents were like, "You're not allowed to play like tabletop RPGs. Those are evil. Those are of the devil." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so I can't play D&D," which, whatever. Is like, okay, can I play BattleTech then? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. I was like, oh, okay. So I played I started off playing the WizKids like totally awful MechWarrior game, like MechWarrior Dark Age. It was awful.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mostly like a bunch of like middle-aged guys that would like get together, and then there was like me as like a, I don't know, 11 or 12-year-old kid. There's like a couple other like, like the kids of the people who were playing this as well. So there's like a couple other kids my age, but every weekend was basically run like tournament style. And I just got annihilated. I don't think I ever won a game in the store of that ever. And that basically set me on the path of being the wargamer I am today.
So you Goku pilled from getting your ass beat, and now you're.
Oh yeah, I had the.
And now you're
Gohan,
training moding.
Yeah, I had the Gohan Piccolo experience. Like that's just how I started playing war games, and so
I've never watched Dragon Ball. I'm sorry, I can't actually relate to any of these.
Piccolo basically just tells Gohan to dodge, and he never does.
And then he just beats him up and throws him at a mountain, and then he's like, dodge!
And then he beats up some more. It's great. That's perfect training.
Like, so today I have like evolved to become Piccolo myself.
Who are you training? Who are you training to dodge currently?
Most of the people that I play against who aren't like currently like beating me into a pulp. I don't know. I haven't been able to practice with Bernie very much recently because he's been busy with work, but I was training Kevin up, and I'm kind of like trying to get Bernie into it. So
yeah,
but just generally speaking, yeah, like I don't know. I actually go pretty far out of my way to try to like help people to improve at the game, or at least to the best of my ability. And it's like it's not always like, not everybody's always like interested in hearing, what you have to say or whatever, but I don't know. I'm always trying to like improve myself as well, so.
Yeah, no, it's good. So that's kind of kind of what we're gonna get into a topic of. I guess like first we gotta like figure out what is casual and then what is competitive and like where that falls into, because I feel like that line between those two things that a lot of people latch onto is way thinner, and they're closer together than a lot of people realize. And it's like
it's nowhere near as clear cut as you would think until you try to draw it.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we went into this with no plan, because I actually think that there's a secret third thing. And I always try to make a point of it in conversations about this that I have.
Oh, okay. Do you gonna tell us? You gonna tell us about the secret?
I mean, I don't want to tell you all about it right now, because I think that there's a discussion to be had. But like, so I think like there's competitive and there's casual, but like there's this middle space where like people are not competitive players necessarily, but like they still want to know how to do things well, so they're trying to like optimize within the framework of what they have or with the ability that they have to engage with the hobby. And I always call them like casual plus players.
I feel like you would call that experienced players, but yeah, no, I do get that one.
It's like, so there's people who just like buy some stuff that looks cool, or like play what they play, and they are just there to roll dice and have a fun time, and that's like a casual player. And I mean, like, the other thing I like about the no rehearsal aspect about this is we're gonna get into our like real opinions, which I all know are pretty skewed in a certain direction, which is fun and awesome. I love that. But nonetheless, so there are those people who are just never gonna like be engaged enough with the game or have the inclination to explore it with any depth. But then anyone who's like, oh, I like this game, I want to learn what's good or whatever, like eventually, like, if you look at data, you will interpret it, and if you have even like a very basic level of cognition, you'll like integrate that data into your decision making. So like if you it's just unavoidable, I think, that some people are going to fall into that like casual plus category. So the idea that it's like painting them as like sweaty or whatever is not necessarily.
Oh,
you know
I
what?
actually have so much to say about this.
Well, yeah. So so yes, I do actually. I really do agree with you, Cass, because I feel like a lot of players do fall into that casual plus or experience set where they're not like going super hard, but they are learning and developing and finding new and different strategies and tactics and how to use stuff to just have that edge and be better, while still like going maybe once a week down to the game store and playing a game. And also, Skillen never mentioned. I'm going to reveal your deep dark secret, Skillen, that he is a professional sword fighter who stabs people with swords.
So, to be more specific about
yeah,
that,
there we go.
I am a HEMA, or historical European martial arts instructor, and to a large extent, it's like, yeah, so I teach new people stuff, but mostly what I do is coaching. So I spend like a lot of time coaching people and trying to like help people to prepare for like competitive environments. So while I'm not competing all the time, I, for instance, have got basically the group of people who joined after COVID. We call them the post-COVID crew. It's been about a couple years now, and I've gotten the people who have joined there up to a point where like they can compete with like the other. So there's actually several other historical fencing clubs in our city, which is like disproportionately a disproportionate number of them. And last weekend there was a tournament, and the rules are not really. I'm not a huge fan of the the way that they implemented the rule set. The rule set as written is fine. It's just the way that they implemented it actually went against what was written several times, in my opinion, or from my observation. I'll try to be diplomatic. But even still, yeah, even still, the one guy that went in and competed, who won second place in our tournament, like the tournament that was held just for our club this year, went in, he won second place in broadsword, and he ended up getting fourth place in longsword, but it was like a 2-point split. Like he lost by 2 points, and part of the reason that he didn't get silver was just due to some of the judging. So essentially, it's like, okay, he wasn't even training super hard for that competition. Just kind of like shows up and then like, you know, places very highly in the things that he's competing in. And it's not because we're like super, oh my god, we gotta like win or whatever. It's just the way that we train is to get better in a general sense. It's constantly focused on improvement, and because we don't like, it's an interesting thing because so what Kaz was talking about is a little bit kind of dips into like what, you know, it's become a bit of a meme, but like the thing that I always go on about is like growth mindset versus fixed mindset, where it's like, oh, are you actually trying to improve at the game? Do you want to actually improve at the game? Or do you want to just sit down, push models around, roll dice, not really like be too critical of it? Because to be critical, like you actually have to look at what you did wrong, and that's like really uncomfortable. And in my opinion, like that's one of the things that like determines like what I consider the most important element, which is kind of emotional maturity. Like, are you willing to like look at, oh, this is what I did wrong, and this is what I need to improve, and here's like the mistakes that I made. And a lot of people just like they're not necessarily like looking to do that every game. And I would just argue like the main split is more of like how hard can somebody go in that direction without getting completely discouraged. And that just kind of that's a huge determining factor in terms of like success or whatever.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
yeah, like I come from a War Machine background that was, a lot of people would say competitive. I know that the group I played in got some, I don't want to say hate, but like some negativity because people were like, they're way too competitive. But it's like and this is what I found was actually really weird when I traveled for War Machine in places that were maybe a little more casual about, is that people did not have an end game chat about the match they just had. Like, it was so weird for me going from playing each game, finishing it off, talking to my opponent, where we both went over like what we did good, what we did bad, what was kind of like decent that needed improvement, some obvious mistakes, stuff like that, maybe some list tweaking, and so on.
Yeah.
But it was really weird going to other, like traveling and going to other metas, and then not having that with my opponent, where I was like, hey, you want to talk about the game? And they're like, nope. And I'm like, oh, okay. This is very strange to me because I thought this was just a normal thing, because it was kind of like my wargaming upbringing. Like, that's how I was brought up in wargaming, and that skill to do that and talk with my opponent after a game has just improved my abilities to play the game so much. And
yeah, definitely.
And
yeah.
I see that kind of, I don't want to say, like, I see the lack of that happen from people who come in from, like, quotes, beer and pretzels games, like, you know, 40k, where people are just like, oh, I'm just going to play 40k for the day or whatever, and then sit down and play with your buddy and be like, okay, that was fun. Thanks, man. Bye. I see it more from 40k, so that's why I'm using that as an example. And then they come to Conquest and they do it again, and it's like, okay, you're kind of annoyed that you got beat, but you don't want to listen or take advice or analyze anything, and then you're kind of just like annoyed that you're not winning. Like, the offer for knowledge and experimentation is there. You're not taking it. This isn't on me. Cool. Like, I'm not gonna feel hurt that they don't want to do that, but I'm also not gonna feel hurt that they themselves don't want to do that and don't want to grow either.
It seems crazy to me personally, and this is just like my lived experience, and I, like, as we've discussed, I'm deeply brain poisoned. And one way that manifests is that, like, I would rather, like, if somebody is going to perceive me as mediocre at anything, I would rather kill them or die.
Oh my god.
Just to be straight up, like, I'm not psychologically comfortable with that. So, like, if, like, not just finishing a game, like, whether I win or lose, and me and the other person just being like, well,
there we go, and then just packing up and leaving without discussing it all. It's like I wonder if it's one of those things where I start to wonder if I'm fundamentally experiencing the world differently than most people, you know?
Well, here's the thing about that. No one should feel forced to talk about their after game. Like,
no, but why don't you just want to?
well, okay, well maybe.
Yeah.
So here's the other thing. Like, here's the other side. Maybe they don't feel comfortable. Maybe they don't feel comfortable with their opponent when after playing that game, because some people takes a while to become friends or to become acquaintances with people or to feel comfortable with other people. Maybe they, as Skillen said, don't want to do that analytical depth. Maybe they just want to play the game and not go deeper. Maybe they played a game with a person they don't like. That happens. Like, it's not
Happens a lot when you're playing with me.
Yeah, well, you've seen me like literally fucking grip the table ready, and I was gonna come across and choke you for one game because I was so pissed off at you because you caught me with some stupid trap that I was like too stupid to figure it out, that I was just ready to kill you. You've seen those eyes. But
I just want to interject here. I think that like a large part of like why this happens, and I've seen this like this is not specific to Conquest or even wargaming. I've seen this a lot. Yeah, I've seen this a lot with like I don't know, all kinds of sports, but like the thing I see it with and have to deal with the most is obviously like fencing stuff. So a lot of times what happens is when you're it's kind of like a challenge to their ego. And what happens is it's like, oh, so I lost, and now not only that, but now I they don't have an easy out of like, oh, well, I just had like bad rolls or whatever. Now you're like confronting them with specifically what they did wrong, and it's like realistically, that's the most important thing to do in order to like actually improve, because otherwise, like, what are the alternatives? Like, oh, well, the other player, you're like your opponent. If you were to just do what you kept doing and you wouldn't, there was nothing in your game plan that you could have changed, then literally you have no options, and the game is like the outcome literally just comes down to, oh, bad dice rolls or whatever, stuff that's outside of your control. So the other alternative is like, oh, I want you to play worse so that I can continue to do exactly what I do and win. It's like, it's so counterproductive. Like, that is like a much more self-defeating kind of an attitude, I think, than even like, I can't really think of anything else. Like, oh, no, the game must conform around me. And it's like, granted, there are things where I'm like, yeah, I don't really know how I feel about like certain aspects of the rules, but like, look, you learn to deal with it, and then maybe eventually it changes, maybe not. Like, fighting games are very similar too, where it's like, oh, there's a patch, your characters get completely changed. What was a top tier character all of a sudden is only like mid tier or even low tier. And now all of a sudden you have to completely change how you approach like several matchups. And it's just like, oh, well, or you're fighting against a high tier character with like a lower tier character or whatever. And then it's just like, you're like, oh, well, I want them to change the game so that like I don't have to deal with this. It's like, well, maybe they will, but until then, you still have to deal with it as it is right now.
Yeah, it's like the whole Ash and Dawn thing, to bring it to Conquest relation, or make it related to Conquest, where a lot of players, especially early on with Ash, like, were having trouble into Ash and Dawn and just didn't know how to beat them. And it was like, they have these weaknesses, bring those tools, apply those strategies. It's like, get them in the flank, get multiple things on them, bring a bit of cleave, shoot them, magic them, they will go down. And like, people kept just running straight on to Ash and Dawn. Both would hit, and then the Ash and Dawn would just grind out whatever that unit is and just keep going. And they're like, well, I can't do this, it isn't working. It's like, these are the strategies provided to deal with them. You need to start mixing it up, you need to start changing, you need to adapt and evolve to deal with this. Like, Ash and Dawn have died, people have beaten Ash and Dawn. My round 6 at Adepticon was literally Ash and Dawn versus Ash and Dawn. My opponent and I fucking grinded for like 6 turns of Ash and Dawn beating each other. Like, yeah. But like, the thing is, like, but still, like, there's an outcome and there's a winner, and like, Once the Ashen Dawn got into grinding each other, just side charge Ashen Dawn with Sealed Temple to get that extra bit of damage to push my Ashen Dawn through my opponent's Ashen Dawn.
The thing about like specifically Ashen Dawn in particular that's like kind of frustrating is it's like they kind of end up doing both like the brick and like the hammer thing. Like they're both like they're
Hamvilles.
Yeah, exactly. They're Hamvilles. So when they were more expensive even and you could get like way more of them, it's like I don't know, they're like playing against UMass, I was able to like kill Ashen Dawn no problem a lot of this, or like in at least a couple of the games, but it's still kind of like but then like most of my army's expended because there's still everything else, or like you kind of have to isolate them, and then it's like you lose on objectives because they're just sitting on the point for so long that you're like by the time that I kill you I can't catch up in scoring. So it's like there is counterplay to them. It's just sometimes it's like I actually think the bigger problem is it's bad for 100 Kingdoms internal balance more than anything. But
no, that's another whole other issue. What's not this topic? We should do episodes where it's like, is it bad for the internal balance of said faction? Bow chosen in Nords.
the other thing too,
a ton of people.
Oh yeah. The other thing about like Ashen Dawn or units that are kind of like Ashen Dawn, like
there was the Tauntor, a lot of times, like all the boogeymen regiments.
Yeah, there's like a lot of stuff that's kind of like this, where it's just like you can just kind of slap it on the table, and it's like you don't have to put a lot of thought into them, but your opponent is gonna have to be like like using like these like 5,000 like IQ Gigabrain Galaxy plays, and if they don't get like the one or two lines of play that actually like are the only ones that lead to victory, then they just lose. And it's like very cool. This is like whereas like the person who's playing like an army built around that kind of a thing, it's like, well, you can just kind of like, it's like, yep, I just slap all the stuff into my deck, and it's usually pretty simple. Like what I'm getting at is there's like certain list compositions and stuff that are just like very easy to play and very difficult to counterplay.
Yeah, I agree. Like,
yeah,
and I don't necessarily think that's bad for a game, because things have counters, and like each faction should have their toys. You don't want too many of their toys, but each faction should have something that's like, this is the big thing in that faction that when you're dealing with it, you kind of have to be aware of, and what tools in your faction are there to deal with it. So
a lot of balanced discussions. This is like part and parcel with what we're discussing, but this is just me derailing things to bitch. But like when you get into a lot of balancing discussions online, especially about this game, I see where people bring up like good units for like faction defining good regiments, and they're just like, well, let's nerf it to shit, let's take out everything that makes it distinct, let's make it just like a line unit, and that's balancing. And like the armies are allowed to have good regiments, and that's something that I think balance cells really lose sight of when they get.
I'm sorry. Did you call them balance cells?
Yep.
Fuck me.
Yeah, no regrets.
God damn it.
The bowel cells.
Fuck.
But for real, like Ashen Dawn, when you don't know what to do about them, it sucks. You feel like you get brutalized, and then you figure out what to do, and it's like, oh yeah, that's really strong, but I know I have an idea of what I'm doing. Like 3 million AOD hits, not a great feeling when it tears you up, but once you have a strategy to, and like it feels disingenuous, I think, also to people who just want to run whatever they want and have a great time. The idea that they're like going to have to adapt to somebody else's plan, I think, and that makes them like, it gives them that revulsion to the whole premise. I don't know. Anyway, armies should have armies should have units that do things really good.
Yeah,
I'm not arguing against that. I think the thing that I'm a little more concerned
I'm complaining about the community, not you. Just
you called them balance cells, for God's sakes.
I think the thing though that I am a little worried about is when you have something that is like a dominant, like we'll use like some game design terminology, a dominant first order strategy, which is like,
Hold on, aren't you also a video game designer on top of a European fencing coach?
yeah,
Man,
that's my
aren't you
day
also
job.
like 6'5" and incredibly ripped? I'm just going now.
I'm only 6 foot.
Yeah, you and I are like
Um,
the same height.
yeah, no, Bernie is the one who's like the giant. Um, but the dominant first order strategy is just, like pretend. I'll explain it like this: when a 6-year-old looks at something, like pretend a 6-year-old's building a list, and they're just like, "Oh, Ashadon," and then it's just like, "I'll take as many Ashadon as I can," and that's actually the best list. That's kind of the problem where you're like, "Oh, okay."
You hear that,
Like,
100K players? You're all 6-year-olds,
well,
including
I
myself.
just I love what I know what 6-year-olds is a real stand-in for, and I love it.
like, you know what I'm saying though. It was just like, okay, um, and you're just like, oh, I'll just like take the thing that is obviously good and only the thing that's obviously good, and then you're just like, yeah, and then that's actually like a really dominant play style, like that turns out to actually be like the faction, like the meta faction list, and you're like, oh, rather than like oh yeah, that's like in games that I'm used to playing, or like other games that I play rather, so like fighting games for instance, usually you have something like, oh, there's a grappler. Grapplers do a whole bunch of damage. They get in, and it's like, oh, they punish me for blocking, and they have a lot of HP, and they can like gamble, so they can like get in on you, and then you get like, spinning pile driver or like heavenly pot bustered, and you're like, well, there goes like a third to like a quarter of my, or well, a third to a half of my health, and then you get hit with it again, and you're like, oh, this is busted, and then you get better at the game, and then it's like suddenly grapplers become far less of a problem. The problem is when you make grapplers also like the equivalent of a grappler high tier, and you're just like, oh, that is actually the high tier. There is nothing beyond that level of play. It's like, it just becomes kind of like a problem. Or at least it also is a problem for internal faction balance as well, where you're like, oh, this is the best thing that this faction has to offer. Any other list is going to just perform worse. So I have to just play, min-maxing for like one unit that's clearly better than everything else. And it's like, it really stifles the game, I think.
Yeah, and that hurts, and I feel like it hurt, as you said, it hurts the top end, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm a little sad and kind of annoyed at Ash and John, just because like there are other things I wish to play, and there is other lists in 100K. There's a couple other builds that are doing very well, but because Ash and John is so easy, it's just like you just print money.
Yeah, just do obviously good thing until you like, so going back to like the competitive versus like or like just the competitive discussion, right? Like when practicing, right? The way that I approach things, instead of trying to like gigabrain like 500 like, like 4D chess maneuver where I predict everything that is going to happen, I just like play games, and then like when a problem arises that I don't know how to deal with, I sit down and like play through like all the variations until I can figure out how to actually like deal with it. Or like, in fencing, if there's a scenario that I don't know how to deal with, I'll just go through it with a training partner until like we figure out like how to handle the situation, or like, and at least neutralize it. If you, because some stuff you can't come out, you're not going to come out like with a net positive, right? But sometimes you can force like a trade where like neither person's ahead, and a lot of times it just comes down to you go through with something, and then you run into these problems, and then you just figure out how to solve one problem at a time, again and again and again, and you do that like however many times you need to, and suddenly you become a much stronger player.
You know what? This reminds me of something, and this goes back to our kind of main topic a little bit, or actually, but due to some of the other things we talked about, like the mindsets and stuff, like I've noticed a lot of players who are trying to get experience, casual plus, competitive, all that. We haven't even defined these terms, but Sweet. They will go and look for external help on problems, or talk about it, or do, as you said, do practice matches, or find other content, or talk to people in greater communities, go to the think tank of different Discords or Facebook groups or Reddit, or find other strong players. Like, if you're having trouble with a problem or something, or want to get better, playing strong players will show you your mistakes, because the stronger player will play will expose your weaknesses, because they're going to take advantage of it in games to win. And as you play more into those players and start covering your weaknesses, it'll be harder and harder for that player to beat you, and they'll have to find other weaknesses that you have to expose so that you can work on those. And I've noticed that people who want to like kind of climb the ladder and get good at really anything will go out of their way to find external help, to find existing good players and talk with them and figure it out. While I find players who are, showing up once a week, playing a game, throwing some dice, pushing some minis forward, having fun, in their game, they're like, thank you, and then they head out. They don't do that. Like, there's other things in their lives that may affect that. Like, I know a lot of players, they're adults, they got kids, they have other activities they do. Like, I know some people do sports, some people play basketball, some guys like, oh, I do fencing, I make a video game, so on and so on.
Let's get the hoop guy on here, damn.
Yeah, I know, right? You gotta have fun with your friends. So I do notice that. So like, if you're a player, let's say even if you are, you identify as a casual player. I'm gonna, before I give my description, Skillen or Cass, what would you describe a casual player as?
I think you actually got pretty close to it, where it's just someone who shows up, they're not thinking about the game so much outside of the game. They care about whether they win or they lose in the moment, but they're not like they're not going to put effort outside of the game, that outside of the games that they play. They're not really going to put in further effort into figuring out how to win.
Yeah, I would agree. Cass?
How would I describe them? Let's see. A cur, a dog, worse than scum. No, not at all. But yeah, no, a casual player is somebody who's just like, they engage with the game like on a normal person level. Like, it's not really something that they like, it's not their main thing. Or it might be their main thing and they just don't have a lot of free time, or maybe it's just their main thing and whatever. I don't really know, but it's not something that really like consumes their life necessarily. They don't spend a lot of time thinking about it outside of the game necessarily, other than, oh, I'd like to play that. So they don't necessarily like, they list build, for fun, and what seems cool to them or what sounds powerful to them in their mind.
Or whatever they own.
Yeah, like they're gonna play whatever they own, but like in terms of upgrades and stuff, like that's, I think casual players is where you see a lot more of the like 340 point kitted out Conan gear type stuff, because they're just like, oh, that's sick, and they're just like they're just imagining like how that's gonna work without actually having the basis of knowledge to know how that's gonna work, or listening to people who tell them how that's gonna work, or I don't know, I think I already said this, but the experience to know how that would work. And that's fine. And then maybe they only play with other people like that, so they're like, the stuff works out the way it does in their imagination. But that to me is essentially a casual player. And yeah, somebody who doesn't really follow up on their games at all to try and like
improve.
Yeah, anybody who doesn't improve it, like, I mean, ultimately anybody who's not applying like practice and analysis to improve themselves in a systemic way is by, I think, the strictest definition of casual, I guess, or at least within, I mean, that's not really a technical definition by any standard, but whatever. Fuck.
I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
There's like a bigger thing. There's like a looming shadow, or there's the elephant in the room here, though. There's like another thing. that is like an actual, like, because casual players are fine.
Yeah.
Casual players,
Yeah.
like I love casual players. There is another kind of person though, and this kind of person drives me nuts.
Oh.
They're what in the fighting game community. You want to do it?
No. I want you to get started. It's just I want to talk about this, but I'm going to be just away from the microphone for just a moment. So you just get it going, and then I got takes for days.
Hop back
so in the fighting game community, this kind of person is called a scrub. A scrub is not a new person. They're not a noob. They're usually somebody who's like reasonably good at the game. But so in Guilty Gear Strive, there's an opening thing that says like mankind. It's like mankind could not like face their sins, so they blame the beasts. And I was just like, holy base! They just made the round announcement a call out to scrubs, right?
Jesus Christ.
Mankind knew that they could not change society, so instead of reflecting on themselves, they blamed the beast. Blamed the beasts. And I was just like, oh my god, that's so good. Like, that's such a poetic way to just like describe a scrub.
Yeah.
And a scrub is somebody who's like reasonably competent at the game, or who is at least not new. And then when something doesn't go their way, instead of like figuring out what they could do better, they come up with 1,000,001 excuses. Oh, my cat ate my homework. Oh, the sun was in my eyes. Oh, the dice, or like
the
dice are the wrong size, man.
Yeah,
it's just like it doesn't matter. They'll come up with like every excuse to avoid.
We have all played
figuring out what they did wrong.
These
people drive me nuts.
I have not. So when I played War Machine, I know there was a couple like players in this category where they're scrubs, but every once in a while they would blame stuff, or not really. I wouldn't really interact with them. Playing Conquest, because I feel like I've encountered more. I'm not gonna lie.
It's
like a Conquest for some reason feels like it has just like aggregated the scrubs from other games, and I feel like the reason is they've come from other games and they're like, oh well, there's a new game that started up, oh I could hop in on this, and I'm gonna make it on this one, and then they just go full scrub mode right from the beginning.
Oh my god. Yeah, like what are some good ones from scrubs? The dice, that's gonna be number one always. Well, if I just like got that charge, it's like you went for a 6 without a reroll. Like, you went for a 1 in 6 chance. That's not a strategy. Or, well, if I just rolled a bit better, you rolled way better than me, so that's why. Or, well, back on dice. Fuck, it's a lot of dice stuff. Or like, well, I could have moved him over here, and that would have been fine. It's like,
oh, you're just playing a broken list.
Yeah, oh my god.
That's my favorite.
That is my favorite too. It's just like, really?
Oh, you're running a competitive list. I'm like, okay, what makes it competitive? The fact that I'm playing it? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm like, that's
the thing. Like, if there's no such thing as a competitive list, because a casual player could accidentally create a hyper-optimized list just by like
fucking around.
Just by making lists. Like, it's not. To dovetail with this kind of like, I hate people who are like, oh, my list is secret tech, because like everybody has all the same options. Yeah,
we can see the rules and we can see the units. What does that even mean?
Yeah, people think that it gives them some kind of edge, like before a tournament or something, and it just annoys me. I'm just annoyed with it.
Fuck, man. I played fucking Horse Lord for Adepticon, put a bunch of battle reports on the channel, and then went to Adepticon and got 8th. It's like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, everyone knew what I was playing.
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah, I'll put it this way. If simply knowing what list to play gives you such an advantage, then it's not going to be it's not a sustainable advantage, right? Like,
yeah. So also with scrubs, I think it bears mentioning, because we've all complained about this to one another privately. There's also what I call the dark scrub.
I want to just play like Beyonce's like that scrub song or whatever.
Yeah, I've been thinking about no scrubs a lot, and then also no pigeons for the heads.
That's another good one. Fuck, we're gonna do music now.
So
Okay, Dark
the
Scrubs,
Dark
go.
Scrub, yeah, the Dark Scrub. So he's usually the big fish of a small pond,
Or
like with other
she.
casual players. Come on,
What?
it's so very rarely she. I mean,
Don't misgender the Conquest players, Cass.
if I don't know whether I should make this joke or not, but like I had to change teams for us to have like more than one girl in the scene. So,
Oh my god.
but nonetheless, so the Dark Scrub like is usually better than the other casual players in their group, but like doesn't want anyone to get better because that would threaten their position and actually encourages people to be worse at the game, whether directly or indirectly, to hold that,
Don't do
that
that.
petty advantage over them. Yeah, don't be that person.
God, that's awful.
So-
Whether you're a man or a lady or a goodness knows what, don't be that person.
This is another thing that like I am hyper aware of because of like doing martial arts for so long. But there's this pattern of behavior that happens, right? Where it's like someone starts teaching martial arts, right? And like, yeah, they become essentially the big fish in the small pond. And they're like, oh yeah, look at all this respect and stuff that I get. And then what happens is it's like, oh, okay, so they like essentially, I don't even think most of the time it's intentional, but they like kind of just fall back and they're really unengaged in the way that they teach. It's just kind of like, ultimately it's kind of like a lazy way of teaching, right? But like people are like, oh, this person is good at doing thing, therefore like I should trust them. And then what happens is they start training, and then you get like the same 2 lessons over and over again. Here's like, oh, here's basic thing, and here's other basic thing. And then you get really unhelpful advice beyond that. And like the coaching skills usually are like, I would argue, quite subpar. But then what happens is it's like, oh, you build up an entire group of people who kind of like idolize this person. And then it becomes a cult of personality. And then all these people also are like reinforcing that person, like that person's kind of like bad teaching. And then it like, and everybody also, by the way, is paying for this usually. So there's like a double down where it becomes like there's a strong financial incentive for this person not to change anything either, because by catering towards people, right, and by basically like placating their emotions and stunting their capabilities, it makes that person feel good. And then like, oh, you get like some sort of like ranking system, like belt rankings. Usually this is mostly what they do. And then it's like, oh, well, I have this belt ranking, therefore I must be like this good. And it's like, well, if anything were to challenge that, that would make them feel really bad. And this whole thing is built around propping up the emotions or like the egos of these people who've kind of been suckered in. And it's sunk cost fallacy where they're like, well, I have to keep like, I can't go against this because otherwise it undercuts like all of the stuff that you've done. And if you can't tell, I've gone through this, and it's like quite a problem.
Yeah, the Dark Scrub is not good.
Yeah, I think
Effectively,
like
is cult of personality.
Also, those are not good. Man, I remember going to the GW store years ago, and I like walked in, and it was like GW, and I'm like, is this a cult? Are these people okay?
I missed that song.
They used to play it, and now they play Lord of the Rings music.
I was wondering what that was when I go in there, and it's.
Did you not
it's
watch Lord of the
playing that,
Rings?
Man, I'm. This is engagement bait. I fucking hate Lord of the Rings.
Can I ban you for this?
Okay, we're on the same page with this at least.
Wait,
I'm glad
you hate Lord of the Rings too?
I'm not a fan. I'll put it that way.
Oh my god!
I like the
ban
ideas
button?
in Lord of the Rings.
Where the fuck is the ban button? Get rid of both of you.
Look, I read all the books, and at the end, I was just like, man, Tolkien needed an editor, and then that was my takeaway. I was like, holy crap!
I've watched the movies. I've read all the other books except for the trilogy, like the Silmarillions, the Hobbit, the Tales of Huron, Gondolin, or whatever.
Leaf by Nigel.
I'm sorry, what?
Did you read Leaf by Nigel?
Probably. It's all on the bookshelf. I go find it.
That doesn't surprise me. No, so like I'm one of those like freaks who like have read a whole bunch of Tolkien but I don't really like Tolkien. I don't like Tolkien's writing style, and like I when I said I put Tolkien on blast in the Discord. I was going off about it, and I was like, the ideas that Tolkien talks about are interesting, but man, it's like being lectured to by like just the most like boring old British teacher who's like, it's like having an old British teacher in like a literature class just lecturing you about something that like you're excited about to the point where you stop caring.
I like how reading a William Gibson book is like having William Gibson describe a William Gibson book to you.
Oh God.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Oh God.
That's amazing.
So I have this weird love-hate
That's
relationship.
so good.
God. I have this weird love-hate relationship with Stephen King, where I love the start of his books, hate the middle, and then love the end.
The end is oh.
Well, some of them.
I
are
think the
actually
endings
decent.
are the bad part.
Yeah, he doesn't in his books well either. But they're finally over. That's why I love them. But like,
Fair.
I remember I read the extended version of The Stand, and there's literally a part where this chick
my
is
God.
like expressing how much, the entire chapter is her expressing how much she loves a guy while she's washing his underwear, and I'm like, what the fuck, King? What were you doing? Like, how many drugs were you on when you wrote this?
Well, cocaine is the thing. Like so much cocaine, and he grew the nail back, so he's back on it. So the book
Is he actually? Now I gotta go find a recent picture of Stephen King.
Well, I mean, it's not really my place to say whether or not he's on cocaine or not, but he definitely, it looked like, had a coke nail. So, I mean,
Looks like
I was only very rarely
York
encountered
Times
that
list.
by accident. The king is back, baby.
It's only his face. Give me your nails.
I think
that's amazing.
I don't know. He's back on my shit list because he endorsed somebody that I don't like. But so the thing about Tolkien is I'm just not crazy about the worldview that comes through from his work. He's not I mean, he's kind of a he's a kind of a wordsy guy. If I wanted to read page after page of fictional lineages, I would just read the Bible. And get the same experience rather than just page after page of Hobbit names.
The Bible has some awesome brutal stories too. Like,
I love the fucking Bible as like something as just a thing to read.
It is. It's so
like,
violent.
Judges and like wherever Elisha is, where it's just like, yeah, some teenagers made fun of me, so then I summoned down 2 she-bears to maul them all, and I was like, holy fuck, druid dominance asserted. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and then you get into the Apocrypha where the really crazy stuff happens. It's like,
Oh yeah.
I'm into this. Rather than like, and Stinky Feet begat Little Paw, and Little Paw begat Thistlefoot, and I don't have time for that in my life.
That's actually very, very accurate. That's exactly the spirit of Tolkien genealogies.
Yeah.
All right.
You're like, oh, it sounds like a furry family tree going on here. Like, what is going on?
All right, guys. So after the dark scrub that is Tolkien and the Bible.
That's a classic BonkTable digression.
Yeah, sure fucking is. What would you... So, Cass, you brought up the Casual Plus player, who we've kind of already have a description for. What would you put after the Casual Plus, a competitive player, or something in between?
I think that it's splitting hairs to divide up competitive, but just because you brought it up, like, I think that there's the person who's like likes the idea of being competitive, but is emotionally able to accept being a mid to low range competitive player.
Oh, so it
just enjoys. Yeah, so like a Cassandra. Like, I'm never gonna. I doubt I'll ever top 8.
I thought I was getting called out there. I was like, oh yeah.
No, I think you're overall better at me, and you put in the work. So like, I would definitely put you above me.
Yeah, you put in your
regard.
Dwag homework and made me work for it.
See, yeah, it's weird because it's like I don't actually think of myself as being like competitive necessarily. It's just I really enjoy the game and I like playing the game. And in order to like experience all that the game really has to offer, like my actual motivation usually is like because like I'm a game designer for my day job. I'm like, oh, I want to truly understand this thing and kind of see how it works, and then I want to steal all the good ideas from it, and then kind of like not steal the stuff that I don't like. So as a result, I just kind of get super interested in it. It's like, well, I want to get better so that I can experience kind of more of like the nuanced levels of play and understand what's going on. I want to be able to look at a top level of Conquest and be able to understand why somebody is making that move and get hype when you see, you know, like the thing. It's just like people who like, it's like, I don't like playing chess. Kind of, yeah. It's like, I don't like playing chess, but there's this one guy on YouTube who's like, I think it's Chess Vibes. I like watching his videos because he just explains stuff in a way where I'm just like, oh, that's actually like really cool and interesting. And it's like, that's where I want to be.
You want to be
and
Chess
just as
Vibes.
Well,
or the player on the...
More, I want to be able to... I want to like be able to understand what Chess Vibes is explaining. And as a result, like once you start to understand stuff and you understand how to like apply it, it's like that's when, like, if you can do something, you understand it. I'm not convinced that people understand things until they can like actually like apply it. As a result, I just basically push myself to get better because I want to understand the game and I want to enjoy it more. That's really all it comes down to. It's like, oh, the game becomes more enjoyable when you get better at it and understand how it works.
Yeah, no, it really does. And also, like, I remember watching... Okay, so I remember watching, I think, Worlds for League of Legends when I used to play it a lot, and I understood, like, everything going on. Yeah, thanks, I know. And then I tried to watch Worlds nowadays, and because League has evolved so much since when I played back in 2012, like 2011-ish, I don't understand any of it anymore. Like all the little micro stuff they're doing. Like I know what the overall game is, but it's like this doesn't make any sense. But then I watched a high-end Warcraft 3 player play and talk about Warcraft 3, and I just knew everything. It was like, oh my god, I know exactly what he's talking about, why he's doing stuff. Like, this is amazing.
That's why the remake of Age of Empires was so big.
Yeah.
Everyone could just come back. They're like, we're back, baby! Better graphics.
I know, and I also played that, because that's also a fun game. But, yeah, I get that. I feel like we kind of get into, like, the darkness of, I guess, a competitive player. We get kind of like the competitive cheater, I want to call them, where they're a player who understands the game, does really well at the game, but they want to go like that next step to be, you know, in the top. And then they do scummy things and they basically cheat to achieve it. So like this is cheating dice rolls, cheating positioning, you and your opponent clarify, let's say, a distance, like, hey, I am 20.1 away, so you can't shoot me. And they're like, yeah. And then next turn they measure it, and they're like, well, I'm within 20, so I can shoot you. And it's like just on the lip, and you're like, well, hey, we talked about 20.1, and he's like, well, it's right there. And it's like kind of that shitty stuff. Players who roll their...
we need to...
Go ahead.
I don't think we need to differentiate like between like competitive cheater versus non-competitive cheater. You're just being a cheater, and like if you're cheating and I catch you cheating, I'm gonna be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what's the point?
It's an ego thing. Can I finish, people? Humans?
No.
Okay, cool. It's an ego thing. What you gain at the top level, like these players who decide to cheat at the top level. Don't do it at the low level because their skills are good enough to win. But they do it at the top level because they don't have, like their ego is fragile and their mindset is fragile that they don't think they can actually achieve it if they just played regularly. And
they got exposed for being a scrub. That's what she describes.
Yeah.
They got exposed as being a fraud.
It's very possible, I think, to hit the end of the line and then find out that you don't actually have the juice to be...
Cross it.
Yeah, and then you don't, but you like the mind recoils, right? So you have to, if you're of weak spiritual character, then you're going to be like, well, I need to maintain the illusion that I'm still good or improving. So whatever gets me to do that is going to be in play. Whereas more like a non-piece of shit is just going to go, okay, well, this is where I've topped out.
Yeah. And the reason why I want to bring this up, because I want to bring it to like kind of a more fundamental thing of why do people think casual players suck and why do people think competitive players suck? And I think it's because of the scrubs on both sides of that line.
Well, yeah, I mean, so and that kind of ties into the emotionality of it. Is just like, I mean, this is a game, not so much on the casual level, I suppose, but really probably on the casual level to an extent, depending on what level of like, I mean, narcissism is what it comes down to. But like, people want to win, people want to do well, people don't really like looking like, you know, people who lose all the time or whatever, or don't have what it takes to be excellent. So like, that's where these inherently competitive games get weird. I think a lot of the time is because people who are not emotionally cut out for
I have a bit of a
getting your ass beat.
I have a bit of a hot take on this one though. So like, there are people who are like, "Oh, I just like playing for fun." That is some sour grapes ass shit. Anytime someone starts coming at me with that, I'm like, "Yeah, enjoy your sour fucking grapes." How about that?
No, I agree, because the idea, like, to me, at the end of the day, like, it's a game that you play against another person and somebody has to win. So if you're not trying to do that, why are you playing the game? I've expressed this idea in multiple episodes, I feel like, but it's like...
And I can respect somebody who's like, yeah, you beat me and I wish I could win, but I'm not willing to put in like the time and effort that's required to like get there. Like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, like, you know, I'd rather you show up and like at least play the game, right? Because like, you know, but like, I don't want to hear people be like, oh, well, I'm just playing casually. Like, you shouldn't try so hard. It's like, you think I'm trying hard. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm at any given time, like the only, like, what I think what they imagine, because I've been like kind of accused of being like kind of sweaty before. And I'm like, literally, I'm just like, oh, I try to like get better at the game and try to help other people get better at the game. Like where is like the trying hard coming in? I'm like, oh, I'm looking at the table and thinking like, where should I deploy this unit? Like, that's literally playing the game. Like, I don't know what they're getting at.
Yeah, I mean, you also get into
salty that they lost.
Yeah.
that's like, what it actually is. It's just they're salty that they lost, and they're being a scrub because they're complaining about it. There's another one for being a scrub.
It's like the sour grapes mentality. It's like, oh well, I didn't even want to win. I just showed up to do that. It's like, I would respect you more if you just said, yeah, I'm just not willing. Like, you got me. I'm just not willing to put in like all of the effort that's required in order to like actually get up to your level, or like, you know. Or if someone's like either just accept that and just say like, yeah, I'm not willing to do that, or be like, well, I'm working on it right now. I need to like figure it out, right? And because like sometimes people are just new, or they like don't really know how to like play the matchup, or like they don't know, they're still in the active process of getting better at the game. But like, I don't know, like I was doing fencing on Saturday, and it's funny because like a lot of times, like I'll just express like my point of view, and like, you know, the people around me are like, that is like some anime villain shit, and I'm like, okay, so like what I was telling them, and it's like, well, and I'd expressed this before, but it's like, yeah, you know, like the reason I started up my fencing club is because I wanted to like get other people to be as strong at fencing as possible, because I wanted people who would be able to push me at fencing, because otherwise I can't get better. And it's like, oh, that's an anime villain arc. And I was like, okay, but that's also like literally like the Goku arc. I'm pretty sure like that's the Z Fighters as well. And so there's one guy that was training with me. This is actually Kevin. And like actually right after I got back from Adepticon, we were like sitting at his place drinking beers, and like he was like kind of like reminiscing on this. So what happened was we were fencing, and after a while I just started like hitting him over and over and over again, and he just kind of like shut down. And I was like literally yelling at him while I'm like hitting him, defend yourself, dodge. Yeah, and his like brain suddenly engaged, and he at least started like to defend himself again and stopped letting me just hit him. And so like afterwards, after I got back from Adepticon, he's like, yeah, that's like the lore of our friendship. I was like, yeah, man. I was just like, so when I was just like, yeah, I'm not about to stand by and like let you stay weak. And like, so when I said that to everybody on like Saturday, they're like, oh shit, I need that on a t-shirt. And I was like, is it really like, I don't know. I feel like that's like a thing that you should kind of like, that's a normal, healthy attitude. So like, why is it so crazy when I say this stuff? I don't know.
I don't. It's weird. And like the competitive players who are cheating because they want to keep going, and then the more casual players who are being a scrub or cheating because they want to be better in their small pond. Like that's, I feel like those are what give the casual versus competitive thing like its negative output and thought, where people kind of get all a little more pissy about it. Because like people have seen this. We've been telling dumb like stories about this stuff.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Without everybody getting mad?
No. But please
I
continue.
think the demonization of competitive players is by bum bitch dark scrubs like I described, who want to throw a smokescreen on their own bad behavior.
I agree. I actually 100% agree with that.
Yeah. I
As somebody who regularly has their own bad behavior used as a smokescreen for somebody else's, I'm very passionate about this.
I know.
It's like, hey, I'm gonna be shitty, but like, don't take me being shitty as a way to hide you being shitty. You be shitty on your own terms. Don't use me as a shield. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. Don't snitch. It's the same, like...
Yeah.
You know?
So, I kind of want to talk about the positivities between casual and competitive and kind of those connotations, because I truly believe that this line where people draw is way thinner than what they really think, and people cross back and forth or blend it way more than they actually give credit for. And one of the things is that there are going to be more casual players than there are going to be competitive players. The casual players are going to be showing up to game days, playing the game, enjoying themselves. What will draw in more players, what will then draw in people buying minis and having new people play the game, what will then have new experiences and new skill, and people will develop, hopefully. While the competitive players kind of push the game in a way of finding what works, finding what doesn't work, new strategies and tactics, teaching newer players or existing players on these things so that they can develop and learn. And that's where these two, I don't even want to call them groups, come together and form their meta. And how that works and how that affects one another. Because, like, you need people coming into the game and you need people pushing and evolving the game. And I see a lot of people get angry about each side in various ways, where you have the negative aspects, like the scrubs and the cheaters and all that stuff, that hurt the sides of the same thing. Because I don't really see a divide between the two. Like, if the line was, you play 4 games a week, you're a competitive player, it's like that. I don't really agree with that, because when I was playing Heroes of the Storm with my one buddy, he was like level 1,000 to like my 200, and I was still better than him. Didn't change.
Yeah.
Like, you can play all the games you want, but if you're not getting any better, you're not getting any better. Like,
it's like, I think like we've largely already like discussed this stuff, but it's like I think sorry, I think the line is like a lot more of like, how much do you think about this game outside of the games that you're playing, and how much are you putting in effort outside of like showing up to the game store like once a week? That's really like where it's like people who are like highly motivated to improve, and then there's like people who are more casual in their approach to playing the game, right? They're taking like the more passive, like, you know, and like you will just get better by playing games. There's like, what is it? Implicit learning, right? Which is just by doing something, you will like implicitly like learn the stuff. But if you're not doing it in, actually Cass's like phrasing of this is really good, where it's like in a systematic and like disciplined manner. If you aren't doing that, then I would just say like that's kind of like the hard line, and where somebody's skill level is doesn't even necessarily factor into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the numbers, I should be the world's greatest Fortnite player, but because I'm not that serious about it, it's just fun to play.
Like the biggest difference, in my opinion, is that it's like, well, probably somebody who's more casual to this game will not like lie awake at night haunted by like, you know, a shitty deployment where they're just like, why didn't I see that? Like they're not having this autistic like brainworm fixation on, you know, this kind of a thing. Like they can go on with their life and it doesn't bother them. Whereas like for me, when like I make a mistake at something like this, it's not that it haunts me, but it's like it sticks in my brain and I can't dislodge it. It's like a puzzle that I just have to solve, you know?
Yeah. Like, so years ago I had a game of War Machine at a finals table, and I lost. And I lost due to a couple things. One of them was I offered to explain my army to my opponent. My opponent said no, and then started questioning me all the time while on my turn on my clock. So I was running out of time. There was a move, a tactic, a strategy that I could do that I've always done, and my opponent called that out, and then the TO sided with him while not reading the second text of rules on the card, so I couldn't use that tactic or strategy. And, you know, then there was them not doing some upkeep stuff in upkeep phases because we were getting low on clock, and I eventually lost, and I was super pissed about it. Because I should have won that game, but there was a variety of different factors when I reviewed it that hurt me. Like, when your opponent asks you a question about your stuff, especially like on clock, you should swap it over to them. It's their time to ask that question. So they shouldn't be doing it on your turn. And if you're doing the same thing while it's on their turn, they should slap the clock back to you. So I could have been up on time. I could have then, you know, thought through the problems better because I had more time to play and so on and so forth. But I had a 9-hour drive, and I called one of my buddies, and we broke down the game for 2 hours and reviewed it and why like I was pissed off about all these things so that I could come to a calmer headspace. And that opponent and I are still good friends. Like, shit happens, games are played, you know, figure it out and move on. But that did make me a stronger player after. Like, I knew where weaknesses, not so much in my play, but in my understanding with other people and what to review and go over with them, so that I could have a cleaner game. But I put all that time and energy going over it after the game was done. And
yeah,
like long after the game was done. And I remember this.
That's why I take pictures.
Yeah.
Like that's actually why I take pictures of my game. I review.
Oh, you cut out there a little bit.
Oh, really? That's why I take pictures of every game that I play, and I also review every single game that I play. Usually, I'm also just like I'll get home and I'll like show my wife, and like I'll just kind of talk about it. So it's like
the rubber ducky.
Yeah, basically. But also I'll like post pictures to like Brian, or sometimes in the Discord. Usually like in the Discord if it's something that's like funny or like just otherwise interesting, where it's like, oh, there's like an entire story like told in like, you know, these like 5 or 6 images, and you're just like, wow, the drama. If you understand the game, it's just really funny. I actually think in talking about this, I think I realized something. It's like the biggest determining factor over somebody who is like making strides towards getting better at the game versus somebody who is just going to who is casual, so to speak, is a casual person will lose and they won't know why they lost, and they won't put effort into understanding why they lost.
Oh, that's a big one. Yep.
A competitive, or like we'll just use competitive. A competitive player, even if they don't understand at the time, they will sit down and figure out what it is that they did that caused them to lose. They'll know why they lost. And as a result, you eventually are able to like eliminate that one thing from your game, that one mistake. And then the next time you play, you find the next mistake, like the next layer, and you have to eliminate that one, right? And it's only by going through And this is true. Like every time I talk about something other than Conquest, it's directly applicable to Conquest, and also every time I talk about Conquest, it's generally applicable to this type of thing in life. But it's like if you don't know what caused you to lose, you cannot fix it. So the only way to get better is to figure it out, and you can either do it fast or slow. And some people do it really slowly, and they just kind of do it intuitively by playing games once a week, right? I want to get to the fun part of the game, which is like a little bit more of like the deep end of the pool. So like I'll sit down and actually go onto tabletop and then like recreate the scenario and then like work through like what the actual issues are. Or a lot of times people misidentify things too. They realize that there is something that goes wrong, but they see the symptom and they don't realize, oh, it was actually due to your deployment, right? Or like how far back you have to go in order to figure out the source of the problem and address it there. And it's like unless you're actually working through how to improve on that stuff, you're going to improve at the game very slowly.
I completely agree. One thing, well, I do something similar but also different than you do because I just don't have time to recreate the game and play it on tabletop. But I do like that you actually do that. And I know we have also talked about that before, but making the battle reports of the games we play, I do enjoy those because I play the game, do the after talk with my opponent, learn from that, make the video of it, like record and go through the slides and talk about the game and the afterthoughts again. And sometimes my opinions change. Sometimes I solidify some stuff that was talked about or what I did or how my opponent did stuff. And then a third time when I edit the game, I literally have to rewatch the whole thing to put in the various cuts and points and all that stuff. So I I go over a game 3 times. What really locks it in, and also it kind of gives my understanding and learning of the game, because there was a time where I was getting like 1 game a month or 2 games a month. Now I'm getting a little bit more because I'm kind of seeking them out on TTS, but like I enjoy the game. I want to play it more. I want to play against strong opponents who beat me because it's going to show my mistakes and where my weaknesses are. You and I had, I don't know, a month ago that very brutal game with the Steelforge and Spires and everything. And I know I failed my 2 fireballs and I was kind of pissed off. And by kind of pissed off, like really pissed off that I failed them, and like walked away and sat down to like take a little cool off because I was just not emotionally ready to deal with that. But then I came back and just, made a couple more mistakes, but then, got my head back in the game and played it out.
Yeah.
And I won. But when we played yesterday, learning from those mistakes and what you did and how you were doing them, I was ready for you.
Yeah.
And that's how the level of growth in it shows. Like, yeah, I won, but I was kind of like super fucked up by the end. Like we had barely anything left for both of us.
Yeah.
But this time around it was, I don't want to be rude to you, but it was a bit of a stomp.
Yeah, I was kind of focused on like the clock aspect of it actually. Which was definitely like, especially in the earlier turns, like I was like much more like conscious of it. And I mean, I know it doesn't matter, but like at the same time I was kind of like and then like I kind of like horribly misdeployed like several important units, and then it was kind of like, I don't know, writing was on the wall kind of by turn 4.
Yeah,
I could see it was coming, and then like turn 5, end of turn 5, I was like, yeah, it's like I just misdeployed too hard and like have lost too much resources in the process.
Do you think you would have played differently if the clock was there or not? Because we were just testing that out, and that was more like, even if it goes to time, like we'll just keep playing because this is just to see if this is an actual thing that could be I don't want to say like a solution, but something people might do.
Yeah. I don't think it was like, I think it's like an element that I wasn't used to.
Okay,
Which
fair.
was kind of like affecting me, and especially like during the deployment thing. Like I was trying to be like, okay, like I've been practicing with like the adjustments to the list. I kind of want to just like basically do a little bit more like speed play style.
You should play Fast Quest or Speed
Yeah.
Conquest. We should play Conquest on speed.
Yeah, let's get a bunch of meth and just tell your doctor you can't concentrate,
Yeah.
and we'll
we
get
need
meth
that,
prescriptions.
Look, that I need that Adderall. Okay.
Look at me.
I just want it.
So partially too, and unfortunately this is like part of what like Dwayne really punishes this type of thing, where it's like, okay, I just kind of want to like essentially like play quickly, and then just kind of like, I'm probably going to lose, but like I'm kind of like playing in order to get like, you kind of like need to make a bunch of mistakes in order to like feel it out, right?
Yeah.
And I had been practicing against actually the Rolo Castle. So I actually kind of like didn't have it. I was more calibrated for the like the ticket spend being the heal 3, so you get like the 6 effective like damage mitigation in one go, and with the fireball sorcerer. So like I kind of wasn't really up to speed with the magma and the steel shaper rather. So like I was off on that, and like because it's like a similar, or like it's the same faction, but it's like subtly similar. Some of my stuff was off. That's why I was kind of like in range. Like I should have rotated the Leonines to just not get shot by the what is it called? The Hellbringer Drake and stuff like that. So it's just like a bunch of like optimization mistakes, and then also like I needed to win that right flank ultimately. The left flank with the Avatara, like the Avatara was actually probably enough to win that left flank, but there's no way to get in to the Dwayne Castle from my left side.
So like, yeah, that makes more sense, because for me it's like, you need to run the right flank. I'm like, man, your right flank was like us having a Warden unit and Avatar unit beat each other. Like that was all there was over there.
No, it was the Avatar beating the Wardens.
Yeah,
let's be clear. I knew exactly what to put on that side. I was just like, oh yeah. But then because of like the forest stuff, kind of being in the middle of the board, kind of like I was like, a lot of times you want to smash the wig kind of from like slightly off center, but in this game it's like, oh, I had to actually push through on your strong flank, which I just kind of was like not thinking about that. And this is kind of like where currently this is what I need to like focus the most on is like, and I was talking about this with Brian too, and I feel like I'm improving at it, but I'm still not where, like, I'm not on the same level, like definitely as you or like Brian or any of like the competent crew, where it's like, in order, like when you're deploying, you need to like, especially with the list that I'm playing, you need to know where the incarnates need to go, like not where they need to deploy, but where they need to end up. Because like if you run them in and then you like charge something on the flank, and then they are like aimed in the wrong direction, because say you put something on the far side of the flank and then you twist them so that now if I engage them, now I'm faced, like my butts are, my incarnate's butts are faced towards like the rest of your army. It's like, oh, okay, like, you know, you need to like plan out where you want, basically your lanes, where you want to start and like where you want to go. This is actually why I outplayed Josh on Thursday, because I was just able to be like, yep, I put the incarnates here, they run through the entire left side of the board and then hook over and go into your back zone, and then I score out.
Yeah,
so
no,
it's like,
that was a beautiful play. I remember finishing up with Colin and like sitting down and be like, wow, what's going on? Oh, okay. The left side has collapsed. Like, the incarnates are going for the archers. Like, oh boy.
Yeah, so it's like against weaker. It's the whole thing of like, I need to play stronger players, but like I also need to just like practice like some of the stuff in order to like get a better game sense. For like, oh, I had to break your left flank because I was able to sit in that zone for like the other.
I was giving
my
it to
left.
You.
Your right.
I didn't care. I was giving it to you.
but I needed to not put stuff in the center the way that I did. Like I needed to just read, like it's basically like a bidding game, right? Where it's like, oh, you bid like your 3 units onto your left flank, and like I bid the wrong units onto that flank, and then just kind of like didn't do the proper stand out of range until everything's pretty much ready to like overwhelm you. And then if I have card advantage, I can like, run Strix up at the end of my turn or whatever. But I don't know. It's like the thing that I'm specifically like working on. So a little bit of it is like if I play a little bit fast and loose in order to just kind of like feel it out, and it's like I'm going to lose, but then I can just see the big picture. Like I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I did that with expert scouts, city states into like Brian's cocksmack list, and
Oh yeah.
because my issue with the expert scouts thing, and like there's people talking about it all the time, and I'm like, what is this actually doing? I have no idea what it's actually supposed to do, because people are like, here's my expert scouts list, what do you think? And they're like, oh, you should change this. I'm like, okay, well, what the fuck is it supposed to do?
What is the rule for that?
Basically what the idea of the list is that you are going to be playing your non-phalanx regiments, what are infantry, so basically 90% of the list, are going to get Vanguard when they come on. So you're going to shoot up Ogma and Thorkides, Silenoid, Shooty Goats, maybe some other things like right up the table. And then you're going to use Fluid Formation. The banner, what gives you plus your charge distance now March +5, or the infantry tactics from the Aristar to pop out and go like 21 inches down into the table and hit someone and then deal a bunch of damage. And then you kind of cascade because you can get a bunch of alphas off. The issue with the list is that it doesn't have any durability. Like the current one is running a Talos, so it's nice. It can lock down a zone, but the rest of like the Ogmas and Thorkides are just 4 wound defense 3 guys, like 2 with a shield. So we all know how men at arms fare, so they kind of just evaporate to a lot of things.
It's like you smack into a unit of Avatar. Maybe you kill them, maybe you don't. Okay, now the rest of my army lights you up and you're gone.
Yeah, so that's... And then there's also, like, depending on the table setup is, like, can you make a long enough line with fluid to, like, swing yourself to get more distance? There's a couple issues with it, but I wanted to see...
Just tell them to play Nords. If you want to play Nords, play Nords.
Yeah, but it's city-states. They got chariots. Leave them alone. But I wanted to see how that list functioned and worked, and even though I lost, I understood what it's good at, what it's weak at, had an after-game chat with Brian. Chop. Have some pork chops later, Brian, if you're listening to this.
Shop chat.
Yeah. And understood it better, because no one was really explaining it very well. I hadn't seen any games with it. Like, I wanted to figure out, like, what was going on. And I did, and I was happy about that. So, and there's that.
That reminds me of another thing that I've wanted to bring it up 2 or 3 times, where it's like, okay, if you are learning something, right? Doesn't matter if it's Conquest or something else, right? Fighting games,
it's Python.
Whatever. You should go out and find other people who play the list that you do, or like who plays something similar, and you should just watch their games. Like, preferably find people who are better than you and who are worse than you, if you can, and then just watch them. Like, that's the whole reason that like I watched other people play Conquest. Like, that's why I watch Ben's games, because I'm just like, oh, interesting. That is really useful for getting better.
Yeah. I do agree. Battle reports, written battle reports, all very good learning tools. Cass.
So what you're saying is that your battle reports are really a community service.
Yeah, I have a community service. I do this as a hobby. Please. I forget what it was. There was one guy who was like, hey man, can we get a game in? I'm like, I am way too busy on Conquest. They're like, what do you mean? And then I gave them like my schedule, and they're like, oh boy. I'm like, yep. This thing gets kind of filled out 2 weeks before I get home from work, so it's a little tough sometimes to squeeze stuff in. So Skillen, I want to talk about one thing.
Hmm.
So competitive versus casual. I do believe that casual players and competitive players should play against each other. And the reason for that is because the casual player will understand and grow from it and see what the competitive player is doing to win. And hopefully they take that knowledge and apply it to other people. The competitive player gets out of it is that they get to try different and unique strategies that they get to see the full outcome. So this is basically, I am going to try something new. Let's say we'll use Esper Scouts and City States as an example. I'm going to try that Railgun Ogma strat. They pull it off. They hit the guy. They watch the thing explode. They get hit back. They play it out and win the game, whatever. But the reason why the competitive player wants to see that and play that game is because they want to see their thing show them their max potential. And if you're playing another strong competitive player, the other player may see that coming, deny you that, and you actually don't get to know how strong it really is, and then you don't put that tool in your toolbox of knowledge and strategies because you're like, well, it didn't work against Brian, so obviously it's not worth it, it's terrible. It's like, no, not necessarily. You just need to see its full potential to you so that when that opportunity arises against another strong player, you know when to use it, or you know that, okay, he's going to counter with this now. What is my next part in this strategy? So, that's one of the things where I'm like, these players need to play against each other. They are both benefiting.
So this is actually a core aspect of how you practice fencing. There's in Kendo a specific, I think it's there's a type of practice where you have a newer person practice against a more senior person, and it's considered kind of a fundamental aspect of how you train. And it's that's also pretty much how we kind of train in my club as well. And pretty much what you're saying is dead on. And there's some technical coaching language type stuff that goes with this, where it's you can, when you're practicing against a weaker opponent, and actually I would in this case not necessarily say competitive versus versus casual. I would just say a stronger player versus a weaker player. You need an 800 elo skill gap, basically, somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're able to do is you're able to go into an exploratory mode rather than into an exploitative mode. So exploitative just being you're exploiting all of your skills to your maximum potential in order to win, and you don't have any room to explore new stuff, because exploring new stuff means that you are probably going to make mistakes, and then you are going to lose because your opponent at that point is just playing their standard game plan, and they can just punish your mistakes and just win purely off of punishing your mistakes. I would argue that's pretty much kind of what happened in our game yesterday. It wasn't necessarily you had to make big plays. It was purely punishing all of the mistakes that I was making, and then those mistakes just added up, and then I lost.
Yeah.
So as a result, it's you need to practice that against weaker players, because you're saying, they let you explore more of it, and you need to kind of have, even as a stronger player, you need to have an environment where you can where you don't you need to be able to experiment. And this is actually a huge deal, because creating a culture where you can do this is kind of difficult a lot of times, because this is where people who are kind of sweats, who are I'm never going to explore anything new, I'm only going to do the thing that is already working, and I will never not do something that is maximum exploitation. I think that's what people mean by sweat lords. It's oh, you're just gonna go all out, even when it's you're just practice. It's you're trying to
Thunder Rider
win.
Kid. You're I have to go all out on Thunder Rider Kid.
Yeah,
he's already in Super Saiyan 3 with his Tauntaur. By the way, Thunder Rider Kid won a Tauntaur at Gen Con. You should be happy.
We love
Thunder Rider Kid is awesome.
I know. He's a celebrity.
We got to meet him in person.
Yeah.
We got to meet him in person at Adepticon, and it was the funniest thing, because it's just we both really like you. You're a hero in the community. And his dad's just like looking at us like, who are these idiots? And I'm just like, yeah.
He was polite.
Like,
Never speak to me or my son ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the kid's just like, oh, okay. He like goes back to whatever he was doing. I was just, hell yeah.
Yeah.
You're a hero.
He should be.
I mean, he's the only person who's going to be able to stop Carl.
Yeah. When he grows up in like 5 to 10 years, he's like,
Yeah.
all right, kid, you've been training your entire adolescence. Now defeat Carl, who's like ascended to demonhood.
Yeah, Carl has become the Akuma.
I mean, by that point, so it's like an apocalypse, right? Like the conquest community is like people can only live in the cities. Like outside of the cities is death.
It's
You
just
can't grow
Carl.
crops.
It's
There's
just-
demons flying around. And
No, it's
killing
just Carl
everyone.
is outside of the cities. He's just rampaging outside of the
He's
cities.
scourging everything. But he's the demon king of the world. You can't play conquest without being in danger. And then finally, this kid turns 18.
He's been chosen by Tauntor.
Yeah, I expect like UMass with like one eye and a peg leg have been training him for a portion of this.
Oh fuck! What the hell happened to me? Jesus.
Well,
When your guts are.
yeah, the post Carl conquest community is what happened. I've been dead for years.
Yeah.
See,
There's shrines to Ben, the late defender. There's like statues of Ben as he's like held back Carl and banished him to the wasteland to Rome.
I will be frozen in like a block of carbonite or whatever. Or no, I would be William Gibson callback. My consciousness will be like downloaded into a AI construct, and people will seek me out to like give grumpy advice. It's like, oh, I'll tell you how it all went down, and then I'm just like, delete me.
Please let me die.
Yeah, Dixie Flatline call out. William Gibson fans know what I'm talking about.
Real Gibbs heads know.
Yeah. Oh, what, you didn't read Neuromancer? You don't get the illusion.
I'm gonna get a DM from William Gibson's Twitter account for that crack earlier, and it's just gonna be your dead bitch.
He live in like he lives in Canada somewhere. He's like in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's somewhere in BC.
Yeah,
So,
it's not that far away. Only
I
like
think for
20
a while
hours
he
or
was
something.
living out of a technological RV too, so he could be coming. He
That
probably
rules.
already knows this happened and is coming for me.
That's
amazing.
God.
Oh.
That's so funny.
I fucked up with this one.
All right. Do you two have anything else to say about Casual Virtual? I feel like we've gone over quite a lot, to be honest, and also things that are not associated to that or to the topic at all.
I feel like it was pretty
A
thorough.
little bit of that
I don't
BonkTable
know.
magic, you know.
Yeah, that's what people come for, the true bonkage. All right, so thanks for everyone for joining us and listening to the Casual versus Competitive. I liked it. How about you guys? Or you gals. You know what? I'm going to do that now. Sorry, Skillen.
Love to
You've
see it.
evolved.
That's fine.
Sorry, you've been force femmed.
Is that what
Oh,
that
no.
is?
That's complicated. That's its own podcast.
Oh, okay. I'm glad that I'm just learning about
yeah,
mostly
this
the
has
queer
been a big day.
community.
Look, offense can only be taken, not given. So
But no, it was, I think we covered what we intended to, and plenty of other stuff too. So
Yeah,
just some of that classic
talk.
BonkTable content.
you love it. So
Good
everyone, thank you for joining us. Cassandra has Twitter. Skillen's got a local fight club, and there's the YouTube channel you can join and the podcast. What I assume you're listening to on something. So hope everyone has a great day.
Bye.
bye.
Also, we have a Discord. Forgot about that one. Bye.
Yeah, we do have a Discord. Bye.